All right, Buck. Let's move on now to another big story from the week. Calvin Johnson announcing his retirement. First of all, just on the surprise level, how did this strike you?
I am surprised. I'm surprised that a ninth year player is hanging them up now, but also understand that look, he's been banged up. He's dealing with a lot of issues, kind of nagging injuries, the knee, the ankle. He seems like he's always in a situation where his status is questionable coming into the week. And so I can see a guy who has had a lot of success, who's also made a lot of money, talking about those big contracts that he signed, being willing to walk away at this time. You do wonder though, because this is a team that hasn't won a playoff game during his tenure. Will he be kind of remiss about missing out on the opportunity? Because I think the Detroit Lions have the foundation in place to be a team that is really a nice playoff team. I just think that, man, a guy walking away 9 years into it, I think he has to kind of want to come back at some point. I just wonder if it'd get him right around summertime when guys are getting back to camp, if he feels like, I'd like to join my teammates one more time.
I think it would be after the summertime, but I think once the season started, once he'd missed out on all that training camp period there. Look, my thing about Calvin Johnson, it doesn't totally surprise me because we've heard some whispers about this, but to me, it's time to kind of look back at what he's accomplished during his career. And when you look at the numbers that he put up, I mean, they're ridiculous. And when you go back, since 2007, he's got the most touchdowns of anybody. You see right here the list. I mean, Brandon Marshall might surprise some people coming in at second with 77, but Calvin Johnson at the very top with 83 and go all the way down. Fitz, Antonio Gates, and Rob Gronkowski. But since he came in the league, Buck, I would say there at least 1 year and maybe in a couple years, you could make a strong case that Calvin Johnson wasn't just the best receiver in the NFL. Calvin Johnson was just flat out the best football player in the National Football
I
League.
mean, he did have a nice run. I'm a little different in terms of like best receiver in the league. He was a dominant player. I think the thing he had outstanding season where he shattered all of Jerry Rice's marks and those things. But I still have memories of T.O. and Randy Moss and those things. And I know their careers didn't necessarily completely intersect. I just wondered for Calvin Johnson, he was the best at his position, but how long could we rate him as the best in his position? Because we've seen the recent emergence of Antonio Brown. We saw what Andre Johnson was at the same time during his career. He never clearly, to me, was the top wide receiver to position outside of a 1 or 2 year run.
Yeah, I think it's a couple years you would say that. But to me, when you look at the physical specimen that he was and just the dominant player, the way he could take over a football game, not many receivers have a way of dominating a football game quite like Calvin Johnson could throughout his career. And I remember him coming out. I remember watching him 6'5", 239, running in the 4.3s, and be like, I've never seen anything like it, Buck. I haven't seen anything like it since then either. His mixture of size, speed, explosiveness, his ability to go up and adjust to the football. He had a skill set I haven't seen previously from him, and I haven't seen since. Now, Randy Moss, obviously, I think will go down as a better receiver, but Randy Moss, in terms of the size and the package that he came in, Calvin Johnson might have been, what do you think, Buck, 25, 30 pounds heavier than
Yeah,
Randy Moss?
Yeah, 20, 25, 30 pounds heavier. The funny thing is, like, when we look at the list of all time greats and the yards and guys 30 or younger wide receiver stats, I think it's intriguing to see that he's right behind Randy Moss. You talk about dominant players, the guys on the all time list. Like, look at that. Most receiving yards, age 30 or younger. He's right there, nestled behind Randy Moss. Credit to him. Look, Larry Fitzgerald is right there nipping on his heels. Says a lot about the kind of impact that Calvin Johnson was able to make. It'll be interesting when it's time to, if he does officially retire, when it's time to talk about him in the Hall of Fame, where Calvin Johnson stacks with some of the other receivers that are also out there vying to get in.
All right, one other thing with Calvin Johnson, too, that I think, I don't know that he gets a lot of credit for, but I surely want to give it to him. You saw that list up there with him and Larry Fitzgerald. We kind of went through that diva period of the wide receiver position, right? We had T.O., we had Chad Ochocinco, we had all these personalities and kind of maybe rub some teammates or rub some people the wrong way. Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, you talk about just pure class. And I think that example they set for the wide receiver position, we've seen a total shift in that position, in my opinion, over the last handful of years. the personality of that position has kind of changed, and I give Calvin Johnson a lot of credit for that.
Now, Calvin Johnson has been a huge guy in terms of impact in the way wide receivers go about their approach in a professional way. I think Larry Fitzgerald is another guy that has that. But also, like, the position is such a different position. You talk about the divas and you talk about the flashiness. We see the Odell Beckham Jr.'s. We see how Antonio Brown and some of the other guys go about it. Calvin Johnson did it in a different way, but I think Calvin Johnson certainly is a guy that most coaches, parents, and even teammates would point to as this is how you go about your business in a very, very professional manner.